The first shot cracked through the stillness of dawn like thunder in a clear sky, jolting Daisy Atwood from her fitful sleep. Her fingers clutched at the rough wool blanket as the wagon beneath her shuddered to a violent halt. Outside, chaos erupted, men shouting, horses whinnying in terror, and the unmistakable sound of gunfire splitting the air. "Everybody down," a voice bellowed from the front of the wagon train. "Raiders, Nebraska Territory, 1857. The journey west had promised new beginnings for 20-year-old Daisy, an orphan with nothing but dreams and determination to her name. 3 weeks into the arduous trek from St. Louis to Oregon Territory, the wagon train had settled into a tentative rhythm until now. Daisy scrambled to her knees, her simple calico dress tangling around her legs as another volley of shots rang out. Through the canvas covering, she could see the pink-orange glow of sunrise casting long shadows across the plains. The light that should have heralded hope now illuminated danger. "Miss Atwood," a rough voice called from outside her wagon. "Stay put." She recognized that voice. Wade Garrison, one of the trail guides hired to lead their party west. 30 years old with eyes the color of a storm-tossed sea, Wade had kept mostly to himself during their journey, speaking only when necessary, riding ahead or behind the wagon train with a vigilance that never seemed to waver. The sounds of conflict intensified. A bullet tore through the canvas mere inches from Daisy's head. Heart pounding, she flattened herself against the wooden floorboards, the scent of dust and fear filling her nostrils. Then came the thunder of hoofbeats, circling closer, men whooping and hollering in a language she couldn't understand. Bandits or Indians in this moment, it hardly mattered which. Death rode with both. The wagon rocked violently as someone leapt aboard. Daisy's hand flew to her throat, a scream building there. The canvas flap whipped open. Wade Garrison's tall figure filled the opening, his face streaked with dirt and what looked like blood. His usually immaculate hat was gone, dark hair falling across his forehead. "Come with me," he ordered, extending a calloused hand. "Now, Miss Atwood." "But you said they've set the Mitchell wagon ablaze. This whole train's about to become kindling. We need to move." Daisy hesitated only a second before grabbing her small bundle of possessions and taking his hand. His grip was strong, steady despite the chaos surrounding them. As he pulled her from the wagon, the scene that greeted her stole the breath from her lungs. The wagon train, 12 families strong, when they'd left St. Louis, was under siege. Mounted attackers circled the caravan, firing rifles and setting torches to the canvas coverings. Several wagons already burned, sending black smoke spiraling into the dawn sky. "Stay behind me," Wade commanded, drawing his pistol with his free hand. They'd barely taken 3 steps when a rider broke from the pack, bearing down on them with a blood-curdling cry. Daisy glimpsed the flash of a knife, heard the report of Wade's pistol, and then the rider was tumbling from his saddle, hitting the ground with a sickening thud. "Run!" Wade shouted, pulling her toward a small outcropping of rock some 50 yards from the wagon circle. They'd made it halfway there when another rider appeared, cutting across their path. Wade pivoted, pushing Daisy roughly behind him as the attacker raised his rifle and fired. The impact jolted through Wade's body. He staggered but remained standing, returning fire in one fluid motion. His bullet found its mark, and the second rider fell. "Wade!" Daisy cried, seeing the dark stain spreading across his buckskin shirt. "Keep moving," he growled through gritted teeth. Behind them, the wagon train was engulfed in flames. Screams punctuated the gunfire. Women and children whose faces Daisy had come to know over weeks of shared hardship. The Hendersons with their 4 towhead boys. Mrs. Leary, heavy with child. The Collins family with their prized piano strapped precariously to their wagon. Wade stumbled, nearly pulling Daisy down with him. His breathing had grown labored, but his grip on her hand never loosened. They reached the rocks just as his strength seemed to give out entirely. He collapsed against the largest boulder, sliding down until he sat with his back against the stone. "Stay low," he instructed, voice weaker than before. His gaze scanned the distance. "They'll finish with the wagons soon. Then they'll look for survivors." Daisy knelt beside him, horrified by the amount of blood soaking his shirt. "You're hurt." A grimace that might have been intended as a smile crossed his face. "Just a scratch." "Let me see." Without waiting for permission, she pulled aside his leather vest and the torn fabric beneath. The bullet had torn through his left shoulder, leaving a ragged, bleeding hole. "You need a doctor," she whispered. Wade's laugh held no humor. "Nearest doctor's 3 days' ride, assuming we had horses." His eyes met hers, steady despite his pain. "You know how to shoot, Miss Atwood?" She shook her head. "Back in St. Louis, ladies weren't taught such things." "Well, you're about to learn." He withdrew a small derringer from his boot and pressed it into her palm. "Last resort. 2 shots. Make them count." The pistol felt impossibly heavy in her hand. "I can't." "You can," he interrupted firmly. "And you will, if it comes to it." From their vantage point, Daisy could see the raiders gathering the wagon train's horses, loading supplies onto pack horses. The attack had been strategic, not mindless violence, but calculated theft. "Comancheros," Wade muttered, following her gaze. "Outlaws who trade with the Comanche. They'll take anything valuable, then sell it at the border." "What about the others?" Daisy's voice trembled. "The families." Wade's expression darkened. "Don't look, Miss Atwood." But she did look, and the sight would haunt her dreams for years to come. Bodies lay scattered among the burning wagons. Some had tried to flee, only to be cut down in the open prairie. Not everyone was dead. She could hear cries, pleas for mercy. The raiders moved among the wounded with brutal efficiency. Tears streamed down Daisy's face. "We have to help them." Wade's hand closed around her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong for a wounded man. "You go out there, you die? Simple as that. Or worse." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "I promised to get you to Oregon alive, Miss Atwood, and that's what I aim to do." She wanted to argue, to rage against his cold practicality, but the truth of his words silenced her. Instead, she tore strips from her petticoat and set about binding his wound as best she could. "Why did you do it?" she asked quietly as she worked. "Step in front of that bullet." For the first time since she'd known him, Wade Garrison looked uncomfortable. "My job to protect the passengers. The other guides didn't take bullets for their charges." His gaze shifted to the horizon. "Been a lot of places, done a lot of things I'm not proud of. Figure maybe I'm due to do something right." They fell silent as the raiders completed their plunder. The Comancheros set fire to anything they couldn't take, ensuring nothing of value remained for any survivors. Then, to Daisy's horror, they began a systematic search of the surrounding area. "They're looking for us," she whispered. Wade nodded grimly. "For anyone who got away." With visible effort, he pulled himself straighter against the rock. "When I give the word, you're going to head northwest, toward that line of trees about a mile out. Don't look back. Don't stop for anything. I'm not leaving you." The words sprang to her lips before she could consider them. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps. "Don't be foolish, Miss Atwood. That wound in my shoulder won't let me move fast enough. I'll hold them here, give you a head start." "No." Daisy surprised herself with the steel in her voice. "You took a bullet for me, Mr. Garrison. I won't repay that by abandoning you to die." Before he could argue further, she looped his uninjured arm around her shoulders. "On the count of 3, we stand together. 1, 2. On 3, she pushed upward with all her strength. Wade bit back a groan as they rose, his weight nearly buckling her knees. For a moment, she thought they would both tumble back to the ground, but somehow, they remained upright. "You're the stubbornest woman I've ever met," Wade muttered, but there was something like admiration in his tone. "So I've been told." Daisy adjusted her grip on his waist. "Now walk, Mr. Garrison." Their progress was painfully slow. Wade leaned heavily against her, each step clearly agony. Behind them, the shouts of the Comancheros grew more distant as they moved in the opposite direction, but Daisy knew their luck wouldn't hold. Eventually, the raiders would widen their search. The line of trees Wade had indicated seemed to recede rather than draw closer. The morning sun beat down mercilessly as they struggled across the open prairie. Sweat soaked through Daisy's dress, and Wade's breathing grew increasingly labored. "Stop," he finally gasped. "Need to rest." They sank down in the tall grass. Wade's face had gone ashen, his skin clammy to the touch. The makeshift bandage on his shoulder was soaked through with blood. "Just a minute," he promised. "Then we keep moving." But Daisy could see he was reaching the limits of his endurance. The wound needed proper cleaning and bandaging, luxuries they couldn't afford in the open. They needed shelter, water, safety. She scanned the horizon, praying for some sign of civilization. The prairie stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the distant smudge of trees they were aiming for. "We're going to make it," she said with more confidence than she felt. Those trees might hide a stream, water, shade, maybe even game for food. Wade managed a weak smile. "You've got pluck, Miss Atwood. I'll give you that." "Daisy," she corrected softly. "After what we've been through, I think you can call me Daisy." "Daisy," he repeated, her name sounding different in his low, rough voice. Pretty name for a pretty girl. A blush heated her cheeks despite their dire circumstances. "The fever must be making you delirious, Mr. Garrison." "Wade," he countered. "And I'm clear-headed enough, Daisy Atwood." A distant shout interrupted their exchange. Daisy whipped her head around to see riders on the horizon, moving in a search pattern away from the burning wagons. "They're coming this way," she whispered. Wade's expression hardened. He pushed himself up, swaying dangerously before steadying. "No choice now. We run." Running proved optimistic. The best they could manage was a stumbling walk, with Wade leaning so heavily on Daisy that she feared they'd both collapse. The tall prairie grass offered some concealment, but not enough if the raiders came close. The distance to the trees seemed impossible now. Daisy's arms ached from supporting Wade's weight. Her legs trembled with each step. But she refused to stop, refused to give in to the fear and exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. "Tell me about Oregon," Wade said suddenly, his voice strained but determined. "What waits for you there?" Daisy recognized his attempt to distract her, to keep her moving. She seized on it gratefully. "My Aunt Catherine," she answered. "My mother's sister. She went west 5 years ago with her husband. They have a farm in the Willamette Valley." She took a breath, pushing them forward another few steps. "After my parents died of the fever last winter, she wrote offering me a home." "Good land in the valley," Wade commented. "Fertile. You'll have a fine life there." "What about you?" Daisy asked. What waits at the end of the trail for Wade Garrison? He was silent, so long she thought he might not answer. "Nothing," he finally said. "Just another job, another trail. No family, no home." Wade's laugh held no mirth. "Lost my family in '46. Comanche raid, not unlike what happened back there." His voice grew distant. "I was 15 out hunting. Came back to find everything gone. Everyone gone." Daisy's heart ached for the boy he had been. "I'm sorry. Long time ago now," he said, but the shadows in his eyes told a different story. They continued in silence, each step of victory against pain and fatigue. The trees grew incrementally closer. 20 minutes, Daisy estimated. Perhaps 30. If the raiders didn't spot them, if Wade didn't collapse, if her own strength held out. The sharp report of a rifle shattered her calculations. A bullet kicked up dirt yards ahead of them. "Down!" Wade shouted, using the last of his strength to push Daisy to the ground. He fell beside her, his body partially covering hers, his pistol somehow in his hand. 3 riders approached from the south, having spotted their movement through the grass. Wade fired once, twice. One rider jerked in his saddle, but stayed mounted. "Crawl," Wade ordered. "Toward the trees. Go." Daisy hesitated, torn between obedience and unwillingness to leave him. "Damn it, woman, go." He gave her a rough shove. "I'll be right behind you." Another shot cracked over their heads. Daisy began crawling through the grass, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might burst from her chest. Behind her, Wade's pistol barked 3 more times in quick succession. Then silence. She froze, straining to hear any sound from Wade. Instead, the thunder of approaching hoofbeats filled her ears. With shaking hands, Daisy withdrew the derringer Wade had given her. 2 shots. Make them count. She rolled onto her back, the small pistol clutched in both hands, ready to face whatever came. The grass parted. A horse loomed over her, its rider silhouetted against the sun. Daisy's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't shoot." Wade's voice. "It's me." Relief flooded through her. Wade sat atop one of the raiders' horses, blood streaming from a fresh cut on his forehead, but wonderfully, impossibly alive. The riders, 2 down, 1 fled. He extended his hand. "Can you stand? We need to move before he brings back friends." Daisy scrambled to her feet, shoving the derringer back into her pocket. Wade pulled her up behind him on the horse, his movements betraying his weakened state. "Hold tight," he instructed. She wrapped her arms around his waist, careful to avoid his wounded shoulder. The horse leapt forward at Wade's urging, eating up the distance to the trees with each powerful stride. They reached the tree line just as the sun climbed to its zenith. As Daisy had hoped, a small stream ran through the copse of cottonwoods and elms. Wade guided the horse along the waterway until they came to a spot where the trees grew particularly dense, forming a natural enclosure. He all but fell from the saddle, the last of his strength finally deserting him. Daisy managed to break his fall, easing him to the ground beside the stream. "Need to keep watch," he muttered, eyes already closing. "I will," Daisy promised. "Rest now." She worked quickly, tearing more strips from her petticoat to make fresh bandages. The bullet had passed clean through Wade's shoulder, which she knew was a blessing of sorts. Still, the wound looked angry and inflamed, the edges already showing signs of infection. After cleaning it as best she could with water from the stream, Daisy searched the saddlebags of their stolen horse. To her relief, she found jerky, a small pouch of coffee, ammunition, and most precious a flask of whiskey. Wade flinched when she poured a measure of the spirits over his wound, his eyes flying open. "Sorry," she murmured, "but it needs cleaning." "Wasting good whiskey," he grunted, but didn't resist as she continued her ministrations. When she had finished bandaging his shoulder, Daisy helped Wade drink from the stream. He seemed more alert now, his gaze sweeping their surroundings with professional assessment. "We should be safe here for the night," he decided. "Trees provide cover, stream gives water. Horse is well trained, won't wander." "And tomorrow?" Daisy asked, settling beside him. Wade's expression grew somber. "Nearest settlement's Fort Kearney, about 30 miles southeast. But going there means riding back past what's left of the wagon train. Could we circle around? Adds another day, maybe two." He frowned. "With my shoulder, and only one horse carrying double, we'd be pushing our luck." Daisy considered their options. What about continuing west? Isn't there a trading post somewhere ahead? Chimney Rock Station. 3 days hard ride. Wade shook his head. Too far without supplies. Night was falling, the temperature dropping rapidly as it did on the prairie. Daisy shivered in her thin dress. "Here." Wade awkwardly shrugged out of his leather vest, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound. "I can't take that," Daisy protested. "You need it more than I do." "Take it," he insisted. "Got my coat still." Reluctantly, she accepted the vest, slipping it over her shoulders. The leather retained his body heat and smelled of tobacco, horses, and something distinctly male that she tried not to find comforting. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything today. You saved my life." Wade looked away, seemingly embarrassed by her gratitude. "Just doing what needed doing." Daisy studied him in the fading light. Despite his gruff exterior, there was a gentleness to Wade Garrison, a core of decency that all his hard years hadn't erased. She wondered what sort of man he might have become if the Comanche hadn't taken his family, if life had been kinder. As darkness settled fully around them, Daisy built a small, carefully shielded fire. They ate sparingly of the jerky, saving most for the days ahead. "I'll take first watch," Wade said, leaning against a tree trunk, his pistol across his lap. "You need rest more than I do," Daisy argued. "I can keep watch." "With all due respect, Miss Daisy, you wouldn't know what to listen for. Prairie at night has its own language." Too exhausted to argue further, Daisy spread her skirts and settled on the soft ground. "Wake me in a few hours, then. Promise." "I promise," Wade said, though something in his tone made her suspect he had no intention of keeping that promise. Despite her fears and the hard ground beneath her, sleep claimed Daisy almost instantly. She dreamed of burning wagons and endless prairie, of bullets and blood, and oddly, of Wade's arms around her, keeping her safe through the night. She woke with a start, disoriented in the pre-dawn darkness. The fire had burned down to embers, casting just enough light for her to make out Wade's figure still propped against the tree, his chin resting on his chest. "Wade?" she whispered, crawling toward him. He didn't respond. Alarm shot through her as she reached his side. His skin burned with fever when she touched his face. "Wade," she called more urgently. "Wake up." His eyelids fluttered, then opened. In the dim light, his gaze seemed unfocused. "Daisy? What time is it?" "Almost dawn, I think." She pressed her palm to his forehead. "You're burning up." Wade attempted to straighten, grimacing with the effort. I'm fine. Just need water. But he wasn't fine. The infection Daisy had feared had taken hold during the night. When she unwrapped his bandages, the wound looked angry and swollen, with red streaks beginning to radiate outward. We need to get you to a doctor, she said firmly. Told you yesterday. Nearest doctor's too far. Daisy thought quickly. What about Fort Kearny? You said it was 30 miles. If we ride hard. Wade shook his head. Too dangerous. Comancheros could still be around. If we don't get you help, this infection will kill you. Daisy gathered their meager supplies with determined movements. I'm not watching you die, Wade Garrison. Not after everything. Something that might have been admiration flickered in his fever-bright eyes. Stubborn woman. Yes, she agreed, helping him to his feet. Now can you ride? It was a testament to how ill he felt that Wade didn't argue further. With Daisy's assistance, he mounted the horse, swaying dangerously before finding his balance. She climbed up behind him, her arms encircling his waist both for stability and to ensure he didn't fall. The sun was just cresting the horizon as they set out, following the stream until it joined a larger waterway that Wade identified as the Platte River. Follow it southeast, he instructed, his voice weaker than Daisy liked. Fort's on the south bank. The journey was torturous. Wade drifted in and out of consciousness, forcing Daisy to take the reins and guide the horse, while simultaneously keeping him from falling. By midday, he was slumped against the horse's neck, mumbling incoherently. Daisy kept a vigilant watch for any sign of the Comancheros as they skirted the area where the wagon train had been attacked. In the distance, she could see blackened remnants of wagons, but no movement. The raiders had taken what they wanted and moved on. Still, she didn't breathe easily until they were well past the site. The weight of yesterday's horrors pressed upon her, all those lives lost, families destroyed. By some miracle, she had survived. She was determined that Wade would survive too. Stay with me, she urged whenever his consciousness seemed to slip away entirely. Just a little further, Wade. Stay with me. Whether he heard her or not, she couldn't say. But each time, he would rally slightly, his body tensing as he fought against the fever consuming him. The afternoon stretched endlessly as they traveled. Daisy's back and legs ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle. Thirst clawed at her throat, but she dared not stop until they reached their destination. It was nearing sunset when she finally spotted the American flag flying in the distance. Fort Kearny stood on a slight rise above the Platte, its wooden palisade a welcome sight after the endless prairie. We made it, she told Wade, who had been unresponsive for the last hour. Just hold on a little longer. As they approached the fort's gates, a sentry called out, Halt. Identify yourselves. My name is Daisy Atwood, she called back, her voice cracking from thirst and exhaustion. This man is Wade Garrison. Our wagon train was attacked by Comancheros. He's badly wounded and needs a doctor. There was a flurry of activity, and then the gates swung open. Soldiers rushed forward, helping Wade from the saddle. He hung limp between them. Consciousness finally fled. Daisy tried to dismount on her own, but found her legs wouldn't support her. Strong hands caught her as she stumbled, lowering her gently to the ground. Miss? Are you hurt? A young soldier peered at her with concern. No, she managed. Just tired. Please help him. The next hours passed in a blur. Daisy was led to the fort's small infirmary, where a harried-looking army surgeon was already working on Wade. She was given water and a bowl of stew by a kind-faced woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Layton, the fort commander's wife. You poor dear, the older woman clucked, taking in Daisy's torn and dirty dress. What an ordeal you've been through. Daisy found herself unable to speak of it yet. Instead, she asked, Will he survive? Mrs. Layton glanced toward where the surgeon labored over Wade. Dr. Phelps is very skilled. If anyone can save your husband, he can. He's not my husband, Daisy corrected automatically. He guided our wagon train. He saved my life. The older woman's expression softened with understanding. I see. Well, why don't we find you some clean clothes and a place to rest? There's nothing more you can do for him tonight. Exhaustion pulled at Daisy like a physical weight, but still she resisted. I should stay, in case he wakes. Dr. Phelps has given him laudanum for the pain, Mrs. Layton explained gently. He won't wake until morning at the earliest. And you look about ready to collapse yourself. Finally persuaded, Daisy allowed herself to be led to a small room in the commander's quarters. Mrs. Layton provided a clean nightgown and promised to wake her if there was any change in Wade's condition. Alone at last, Daisy washed the dust and blood from her skin with water from the porcelain basin. As she changed into the borrowed nightgown, the events of the past 36 hours crashed over her like a wave. The attack, the deaths, Wade's wounding, their desperate flight, all of it suddenly overwhelming. She sank onto the narrow bed as sobs tore from her throat. For the first time since the wagons had been ambushed, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her grief and fear. She cried until no more tears would come, until exhaustion claimed her at last. Morning brought a semblance of clarity. Daisy woke to sunlight streaming through the small window and the distant sounds of Fort Life men drilling, horses neighing, the blacksmith's hammer ringing against his anvil. Mrs. Layton had left a simple dress draped over a chair, plain brown calico, serviceable rather than pretty, but blessedly clean. After washing and dressing, Daisy made her way back to the infirmary. She found Wade awake, propped against pillows, his shoulder heavily bandaged. The fever had left his face drawn and pale, but his eyes were clear when they met hers. "Miss Atwood," he greeted formally. "The doctor says I have you to thank for my life." Daisy moved to his bedside, relief making her lightheaded. "I think we're rather even on that score, Mr. Garrison." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Back to formalities, are we? After you've seen me at my worst?" "Force of habit," she admitted, returning his smile. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a buffalo herd. But the doc says the fever's broken. Another day or two, I'll be fit to travel." Something in his tone caught her attention. "Travel where?" Wade's gaze shifted away from hers. "Fort Commander's sending a patrol to what's left of the wagon train. See if there are other survivors, bury the dead. I'll join them. And after that," Daisy pressed, not entirely sure why his answer seemed so important. "Haven't decided yet." His fingers plucked restlessly at the blanket covering him. "Might head to California. Heard they're still finding gold in those hills." Disappointment pierced Daisy unexpectedly. Of course Wade wouldn't continue to Oregon. Why would he? His contract as guide had ended with the destruction of the wagon train. He owed her nothing more. "I see," she said, struggling to keep her voice level. "Well, I should let you rest." She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Daisy." The sound of her name on his lips sent an inexplicable warmth through her. She looked back at him. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not leaving me behind." "You're welcome." She hesitated, then added softly, "I would never have left you, Wade." Over the next week, life at Fort Kearny fell into an unexpected rhythm. Daisy found herself helping in the infirmary, assisting Dr. Phelps as he tended to Wade and the fort's other patients. Her careful hands and calm demeanor made her a natural at nursing, the doctor said. Wade grew stronger each day. His wound was healing cleanly now, and soon he was able to leave his bed, walking slowly around the fort grounds. Daisy avoided being alone with him, unsure of the strange feelings that seemed to surface whenever he was near. Instead, she threw herself into work, grateful for the distraction and the sense of purpose it provided. The patrol returned from the wagon train site with grim news. They had found no survivors. The Comancheros had been thorough in their brutality. The soldiers had buried the dead as best they could, marking the graves with crude crosses. That night, Daisy sat alone on the fort's eastern wall, watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. She thought of the families she had traveled with, their hopes and dreams reduced to wooden markers on the endless prairie. She thought of her aunt in Oregon, who might never know what had happened to her niece. And she thought, despite her best efforts not to, of Wade Garrison, who would soon ride away from Fort Kearny and out of her life. "Mind if I join you?" His voice startled her from her reverie. Daisy looked up to find Wade standing a few feet away, his left arm still in a sling, but otherwise looking much recovered. Of course not. He lowered himself to sit beside her, his long legs dangling over the edge of the wall. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, watching the night deepen around them. "Commander says another wagon train's expected through in 2 weeks, Wade finally said. "Heading to Oregon. He's arranged passage for you with them." Daisy nodded, unsurprised. It was the logical solution. "That's very kind of him." Wade cleared his throat. I've been thinking. Might be they could use another guide. Trail can be dangerous this time of year. Her heart gave a peculiar leap. You'd continue to Oregon? He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Been a long time since I had a reason to go anywhere in particular. Figure maybe it's time I saw the Willamette Valley. Because of me, the question slipped out before Daisy could stop it. Wade was silent so long she thought he might not answer. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His palm was calloused, warm against her skin. Because of you, he confirmed quietly. If that's something you might want. Joy, unexpected and overwhelming, flooded through Daisy. I would want that very much, Wade Garrison. His smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines carved by years of solitary wandering. Then it settled. It wasn't a declaration of love, not quite. But as Wade's fingers intertwined with hers, Daisy felt a sense of rightness, of coming home after a long journey. Perhaps that was what love began as, not grand passion but quiet certainty, the knowledge that you had found someone worth staying for. The following days brought a new lightness to their interactions. Wade continued to regain his strength, and Daisy continued her work in the infirmary, but now they sought each other out in free moments. They walked the perimeter of the fort together, Wade pointing out features of the landscape, teaching her to read the prairie as he did. In the evenings, they would sit with the soldiers around the campfire, listening to stories and occasionally sharing their own. Wade, she discovered, had a dry wit that could startle laughter from the most stoic of men. And when he spoke of his travels, of the places he had seen and the people he had met, Daisy found herself captivated by this glimpse into his adventurous life. 1 week before the expected wagon train was due to arrive, Commander Layton called them to his office. A grave-faced man in his 50s, the commander had been unfailingly kind to both Daisy and Wade during their stay. There's been a change of plans, he announced without preamble. The wagon train we were expecting has been delayed. Won't be through for another month, possibly longer. Daisy's heart sank. Another month at the fort wasn't a hardship. She had grown comfortable there, but it meant delaying their journey to Oregon until dangerously late in the season. Winter comes early in the mountains, Wade said, voicing her concerns. If we wait much longer, we risk getting snowed in before reaching the valley. Commander Layton nodded. Precisely my thinking, which is why I have an alternative to propose. He unfolded a map on his desk. I'm sending a supply convoy to Fort Laramie next week. 6 wagons, 20 soldiers. From Laramie, it's a straighter shot to the Oregon Trail than from here. You could join the convoy, then continue with another wagon train from there. Wade studied the map thoughtfully. Decent plan. Laramie's well positioned. And the military escort would provide security. Then you'll go? The commander asked. Wade glanced at Daisy, clearly leaving the decision to her. Yes, she said firmly. We'll go. The week before departure passed quickly. Dr. Phelps declared Wade fit for travel, though he cautioned against strenuous activity for another few weeks. Daisy was gifted with provisions and a small trunk of second-hand clothing from the fort's family's practical garments, better suited to frontier life than the city dresses she had brought from St. Louis. The night before they were to leave, Wade found Daisy in her usual spot on the eastern wall. The early September air had a hint of autumn crispness, promising cooler days ahead. Can't sleep? He asked, settling beside her. Just thinking. She hugged her knees to her chest. About what lies ahead. Wade nodded, understanding in his eyes. Oregon will be different from what you're used to. Harder in some ways, simpler in others. I'm not afraid of hard work, Daisy said. And after everything that's happened, I think I'm stronger than I knew. You are. Wade's voice held absolute certainty. Strongest woman I've ever met, Daisy Atwood. She smiled at that, pleased by his confidence in her. What about you, Wade? What are you looking for in Oregon? He considered the question seriously. Peace, maybe. Been moving so long, I've forgotten what it feels like to stay still. His gaze met hers, earnest in the starlight. Thought maybe I could build something there. Something that lasts. With me? Daisy asked softly. Wade took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. If you'll have me. No, I'm not much, just a saddle-worn guide with more scars than prospects. But I'd treat you right, Daisy. Give you a good life. Her heart swelled with emotion. It wasn't the flowery proposal St. Louis girls dreamed of, but it was honest and real like the man himself. I think, she said carefully, that I began falling in love with you the moment you stepped in front of that bullet. Wonder dawned in Wade's eyes. You love me. I do. Saying it aloud made it more real somehow, more certain. I love you, Wade Garrison. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Never thought I'd hear those words again. Never thought I'd want to. And now I know I love you too. Wade's voice was rough with emotion. Have since that first day on the trail, when you stood up to Old Man Henderson for mistreating his oxen. Knew then you were special. Joy bubbled up inside Daisy like a spring. She leaned forward, emboldened by his confession, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a question asked and answered. Then Wade's hand came up to cradle her cheek, deepening the kiss with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally parted, both were breathing unsteadily. Well, Wade murmured, forehead resting against hers. Seems we've got ourselves an understanding. Daisy laughed softly. Seems we do. They were married the next morning in the fort's small chapel, Commander Layton giving the bride away, Mrs. Layton dabbing at her eyes throughout the brief ceremony. Dr. Phelps stood as Wade's best man, and the fort's chaplain pronounced them husband and wife just as the sun reached its zenith. There was no white dress, no elaborate cake, no dancing. Just a simple ceremony followed by a meal shared with the soldiers and families who had become friends during their stay. Yet as Daisy looked around at the smiling faces, at Wade's hand wrapped protectively around hers, she couldn't imagine a more perfect wedding day. That afternoon, they departed with the supply convoy. Daisy rode in one of the wagons alongside the quartermaster's supplies, while Wade rode alongside on a horse provided by the fort, a wedding gift from Commander Layton. The journey to Fort Laramie took 10 days. Unlike the ill-fated wagon train, the military convoy moved with precision and vigilance. Guards rode ahead and behind, and each night camp was established with an eye toward defensibility. Daisy slept soundly knowing Wade was nearby, his presence a comfort even in the strange surroundings. At Fort Laramie, they learned that a sizable wagon train was departing for Oregon in just 3 days, perfect timing for their arrival. The fort's commander, a friend of Layton's, arranged for Wade to join as a guide, his experience and knowledge of the trail a valuable asset. And so they continued westward, part of a new community making its way toward a new life. Daisy found herself forming friendships with the other women, sharing work and stories as the miles passed beneath their wagon wheels. Wade rode ahead most days, scouting the trail, but returned each evening to the campfire they shared. In those quiet moments, as darkness settled over the prairie and stars emerged overhead, they began to truly know each other. Wade spoke of his years as a Texas Ranger, of the darkness that had nearly consumed him after his family's death. Daisy told him of her childhood in St. Louis, of her parents' kindness and the dreams they had nurtured in their only daughter. They would have liked you, she told him one night, her head resting on his shoulder as they sat before their campfire. My father especially. He valued honesty above all things. Wade's arm tightened around her. Hope I can live up to that. You already do. She turned to press a kiss to the underside of his jaw. Every day, their physical relationship developed gradually, constrained by the public nature of wagon train life. Stolen kisses behind wagons, hands clasped as they walked side by side. The warmth of bodies pressed together beneath blankets as they slept, all building a sweet anticipation for the day they would truly be alone together. The wagon train crossed the Continental Divide in early October, the mountains already dusted with early snow. They pushed hard, everyone aware of the race against winter. Wade's experience proved invaluable as he guided them through shortcuts and passes that shaved precious days off their journey. Finally, 6 weeks after leaving Fort Laramie, they crested a rise and saw before them the green expanse of the Willamette Valley. After the harsh beauty of the mountains and desert, the valley seemed impossibly lush, a promised land of rich soil and abundant water. It's beautiful, Daisy breathed, standing beside the wagon as they paused to take in the view. Wade nodded, his arm around her waist. Worth every mile. The wagon train would continue to Oregon City, but Daisy and Wade parted from the group here. Her aunt's farm lay to the north, near present-day Salem. With directions obtained from fellow travelers familiar with the area, they set out on the final leg of their journey. 2 days of easy travel brought them to a modest farmhouse nestled against a backdrop of fir trees. Smoke curled invitingly from the chimney, and a well-tended garden spread to one side. Daisy's heart pounded as they approached. What if her aunt didn't remember inviting her? What if she couldn't accommodate a niece who arrived with a husband in tow? Her fears proved groundless. Catherine Andrews rushed from the house at their approach, her resemblance to Daisy's mother bringing tears to both women's eyes. "Daisy, is it really you?" Her aunt embraced her fiercely. "We heard about the attack on the Miller wagon train. We thought we feared. I survived," Daisy said simply. "Thanks to Wade." She drew back, turning to her husband. "Aunt Catherine, this is my husband, Wade Garrison." If Catherine was surprised by this news, she hid it well. "Then your family too, Mr. Garrison. Welcome to our home." Wade removed his hat, nodding respectfully. "Madam." The reunion with her Uncle William was equally warm. A tall, weather-beaten man with kind eyes, he shook Wade's hand vigorously and declared himself delighted to have another man about the place. 160 acres is more than Catherine and I can manage alone these days, he explained over dinner that night. Been thinking of taking on a partner. Someone to work the land, share the profits. Interested, Garrison? Wade glanced at Daisy, surprise and hope mingling in his expression. "That's a generous offer, sir. Will and I have no children," Catherine explained. The farm would have gone to Daisy eventually anyway. This way, you can build your own place on the property. Make it your own. That night, in the small guest room with its feather bed and handmade quilt, Wade pulled Daisy into his arms. "How does it feel? Coming home?" She considered the question seriously. "It feels right. But home isn't this place, Wade. It's you." His kiss was tender, full of promise and shared dreams. And later, as they came together as husband and wife for the first time, Daisy knew with absolute certainty that all the hardship, all the loss and fear, had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Winter in the Willamette Valley proved milder than the harsh seasons Wade and Daisy had known in their previous lives. Rain replaced snow most days, turning the world a perpetual green that startled Daisy with its vibrancy after the browns and grays of the prairie. They settled into life on the Andrews farm with surprising ease. Wade and William began construction on a small cabin near the eastern edge of the property, working through the wet weather with dogged determination. By Christmas, the structure was weathertight, though still lacking many finishing touches. "It's perfect," Daisy declared when Wade carried her across the threshold for the first time. The cabin was simple, one large room with a stone fireplace, wooden floor, and 2 windows that looked out toward the mountains. But it was theirs, built with Wade's hands, the first real home either had known in years. As winter gave way to spring, they established rhythms of work and rest that suited them both. Wade took to farming with the same quiet competence he had shown as a guide, learning quickly from William's experienced tutelage. Daisy divided her time between the cabin and her aunt's household, the 2 women sharing cooking, preserving, and gardening tasks. In late April, as wildflowers carpeted the valley floor and the fruit trees burst into fragrant bloom, Daisy woke one morning with a certainty that made her heart skip. "Wade," she said that evening as they sat before their fire, her head on his shoulder. "I think I'm with child." His body went still beside her. Then, slowly, he turned to face her, wonder and fear mingling in his eyes. "A baby? You're sure?" "Reasonably sure." She took his hand, placing it over her still flat stomach. "Aunt Catherine thinks so too. Says I have the look about me." For a moment, Wade said nothing, his palm warm against her through the fabric of her dress. Then, to her astonishment, she saw tears gather in his eyes. "Wade," she whispered, alarmed. "Never thought I'd have a family again," he said hoarsely. "After what happened, I closed that door. Thought it was safer that way." Understanding dawned. "You're frightened." He nodded, not bothering to deny it. "World's a dangerous place, Daisy. What if I can't protect you? Protect our child?" "You already have." She cupped his face in her hands. "The day the wagon train was attacked, you put your body between me and danger without hesitation. That's who you are, Wade Garrison. That's the father our child will have." Some of the tension left his shoulders. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "I love you, both of you, and we love you." Daisy smiled through her own tears. "Our protector, our home." The months that followed were filled with preparation and anticipation. Wade doubled his efforts on the cabin, adding a small second room for the baby. William and Catherine gifted them with a cradle that had once been intended for their own children, a dream that had never materialized. As Daisy's body changed, growing round with new life, Wade's protective instincts intensified. He hovered nearby when she worked in the garden, insisted on carrying even the lightest loads, and checked the cabin for drafts with obsessive regularity. "You're going to wear yourself ragged before the baby even arrives," she teased him one day in early autumn as he reinforced the cabin's roof for the third time. Wade grinned sheepishly from his perch on the ladder. "Just want everything to be ready." "It is ready. We're ready." Daisy rested her hands on her swollen belly. "Though your son seems in no hurry to join us." "Son." Wade climbed down, wiping his hands on his trousers. "You sound mighty certain." "Just a feeling." She smiled up at him. "He'll be strong like his father. Kind like his father, too." Wade kissed her then, tenderly, his hand joining hers over the place where their child grew. "And stubborn like his mother. God help us all." Their son arrived on the first day of winter, after a long labor that left Daisy exhausted but triumphant. Catherine served as midwife, her calm efficiency a blessing during the difficult hours. "He's perfect," Wade whispered when the squalling infant was placed in his arms for the first time. The awe in his voice brought fresh tears to Daisy's eyes. They named him James, after Daisy's father, with William as his middle name to honor her uncle. Little Jamie, as he was soon called, had Wade's dark hair and Daisy's determined chin, a perfect blend of his parents. Life adjusted to accommodate this new presence. Wade built a rocking chair that sat before the fire, where Daisy would nurse their son in the quiet evening hours. He took to fatherhood with the same quiet intensity he brought to everything important, learning to change clumsy diapers and walk the floor with a colicky baby without complaint. Spring came again, bringing with it the first anniversary of their arrival in the valley. As they stood together outside their cabin, Jamie asleep in Daisy's arms, Wade surveyed the land that was now their home. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it," he said softly. "All this. You, Jamie. A year ago, I was just a hired guide with nothing to my name but a horse and a rifle. And now—" Daisy prompted, leaning into his side. Wade's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Now I'm the richest man alive." As twilight deepened into night, stars appeared overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss at Fort Kearny, the same stars that had guided them west along the Oregon Trail. Daisy thought of the journey that had brought them here, of bullets and bandages, of fear and courage, of a wagon train attacked at dawn, and a cowboy who had shielded her with his own body. Some might call it chance that had brought them together. Daisy knew better. Some things were meant to be, written in a language older than the prairie itself. And as Wade took their sleeping son from her arms, pressing a kiss to the infant's forehead before bestowing one on her lips as well, she gave silent thanks for the brutal twist of fate that had led her to this perfect moment, this perfect peace. "Come inside," Wade murmured against her hair. "It's getting cold." Hand in hand, they walked into the warmth of their cabin, closing the door on the vastness of the night sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys. The farm would need tending, Jamie would grow and change, and life would continue its relentless forward motion. But for now, in this moment, they were home. They were together. And after everything they had survived, everything they had overcome, that was miracle enough. Years passed. The Andrews farm prospered under the shared care of the two families. Jamie grew from infant to toddler to sturdy boy, soon joined by a sister, Catherine Rose, named for the aunt who had opened her home and heart to Daisy when she needed it most. Wade never returned to guiding. The restlessness that had driven him for so many years seemed to have quieted at last. He still kept his rifle clean and ready, still taught his children to be vigilant in a world that could turn dangerous in an instant. But the darkness that had once shadowed his eyes receded with each passing season. Sometimes, on clear summer nights, Wade and Daisy would sit on the porch of their now expanded cabin, watching their children chase fireflies in the yard. And if Wade's gaze occasionally turned eastward, toward the distant mountains and the long trail that had brought them to this place, Daisy never questioned it. Some memories couldn't be forgotten, nor should they be. After all, it was on that trail, in the worst moment of violence and fear, that their story had truly begun. A wagon train attacked at dawn. A cowboy shielding a woman with his own body. A bullet that might have ended one life, but instead created 3 more. One act of courage, echoing through time. One choice that had made all the difference. "Penny for your thoughts," Wade would say, finding her lost in remembrance. And Daisy would smile, taking his hand in hers. "Just thinking about how far we've come. And how far we have yet to go," he would add, eyes crinkling at the corners in the way she loved. Together, always together. That was the promise they had made, the life they had built. That was home.